business tips to successfully start and run your business so your business doesn't run you. And more importantly, we provide personal development tools to create a better version of yourself to provide the solid foundation for your life and business to stand upon. This is the Biz Reveal, and I'm your host, Craig Sawyer. This week's episode is sponsored by Sawyer Health Solutions. Protecting what's important to you is what's important to us. Get your free health insurance quote at SawyerHealthSolutions.com. Previously featured on NBC, Fox, ABC, CBS, PBS, and various other TV and radio outlets, Christopher Howard has been delivering massive value to media audiences worldwide for the past 2 decades. Christopher explains how to free yourself from the prison of your mind, breaking through to greater levels of success, and taking charge of the unconscious forces that create success to become a powerful leader. After the show, learn more at www.speakandgrowrich365.com. This is the Biz Reveal Podcast with this week's guest, Christopher Howard.
I've been blessed to have done over $100 million in sales of our seminars, our coaching around the planet. And I love to help people transform their lives. So that's what I'm about. Been in the field, had huge ups and had huge downs as well. I'm reminded of the Frank Sinatra song, That's Life, right? I've been what was it? A puppet, a pirate, a pauper, a poet, a pawn and a king. Been all these things, right? I've been all over the place in my history throughout the field. And even though it may sound trite to say, sometimes it's the lowest lows that give us the greatest joy, ultimately, greatest lessons. So been all over the map and happy to help in any way I can.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you're right. You know, there's sometimes it's character building, right? When you have those lows, and you can't ever really appreciate the highs unless you've had the low to compare it to. Right? You can't appreciate the win.
Sometimes, I mean, the thing with the lows is the hardest time lows is when you're in them.
True.
I remember, man, I hit some tough times in my business and in my life, and coming to me and saying, hey, you just got to feel grateful. Just feel grateful. Find the gift in it. And ultimately that is the answer, I think. But to find the gift when you're stuck in the problem is very difficult at times because you can't read the label from the inside of the jar. Sure. And sometimes we need somebody from the outside to help us see it in a different, and it can come in the form of teachers or mentors or coaches or guides, or even, a podcast like this, because we learn from other people's experience. Reminded of the movie Arabian Nights, and the master storyteller said that people need stories more than bread itself. They tell us how to live and why. And so I think that there's so much that we can learn from other experience. And that's why I'm glad to share the message. And that's also why I'm glad to share the message in an unvarnished way, because I think that's where people are going to learn the most.
Yeah, keep it raw. You know, I like it raw and straight to the point, because if it's too polished, it doesn't feel real. And I think especially this subject is something I want to make sure hits. It needs to hit home. And you mentioned something a second ago that kind of reminded me of one of the questions I have for you, actually, is when you're in the moment, you're in that big pile of crap. What is the best way to get your mind right? Because we all have something going on, right? Everybody has something going on at any given point in time. You have a death in the family. You're not feeling well. You got financial issues going on. You know, whatever the case is, you can't always have that ideal mindset, but you have to have that ideal mindset to get to be successful, whatever definition you may have. How do you change that mindset when you do have some of these things going on?
Right. That's kind of the paradox, right?
It's a golden question,
right? You can't always have it. Yeah, but you need to have it. F. Scott Fitzgerald said that the true mark of intelligence is the ability to hold two seemingly opposing ideas in mind simultaneously. That's paradox. Right. So how do we do that? And you know what? You triggered a thought as you asked that question, because I was on Clubhouse, and I think most people are aware of the Clubhouse app now. If not, they will be soon. Have you been on there?
I haven't been on it yet, no.
Well,
I know what it is, but I haven't been there.
You dig it. I mean, it takes some figuring out. There's like and podcasts that are happening at any given moment that erupt in cyberspace, and all these town hall rooms that erupt where everybody's speaking. And I was on there the other day, and you hear a young person that was on there. When I say young, I mean, for me, that's 25 now. My birthday. I'm going to be 51 this week.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, brother. But there was a younger person on there that was, she knew her stuff from a personal development perspective, from a mindset perspective, but you could also tell how raw and green he was. And there's concepts and philosophies, and then there's life experience. And it's kind of like the person that comes right out of business school that has all the ideas of how to change the world, but they haven't really put them into practice and been tested yet. And
right.
I think we all get tested. And so there's this green energy that goes with it. That when I say green, I mean new energy, this new birth of energy. And it's like, okay, if you're around long enough, you're going to get bloodied. You're going to get your nose popped. You're going to feel some pain.
Right.
And it's when the pain hits that it's most important that we apply the principles. I mean, that's, when I look back about my life, I've had some tough times. And I remember like when I was first starting on my career path in personal development, and things weren't working for me financially. I had a huge amount of debt. I had, in addition to the debt, I had no prospects of bringing more revenue in. Like there wasn't, at the time I was doing personal training and I was trying to get a transition into personal development. So there was nothing that gave me any reason to believe that I was going to hit some big gold mine of revenue coming in. And at the same time, I had so much debt that I was in trouble. So I got myself in trouble. And I remember reading a book called The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity by Catherine Ponder. And the only reason I read that book was because a friend had recommended it to me. It's a book of spiritual reframes on wealth. And one of the things that she said inside that book was that it's important when you can't afford that you still lay out your best china and you visualize it and you see it. And that's the hardest time to do it because your vision is running counter to reality. But as visionaries, your vision's always running counter to reality, right? You're looking at it and going, the leader sees things as they are, sees things as they can be, and then looks to close that gap rapidly with and through other people, ideally, because that's where we get the most leverage. But when we're in that place where we're looking at a reality that's starkly different from how we would imagine it to be, that's where it's most important to apply those principles, to use those principles. And it's interesting because I say that now, we don't continue to apply those principles once we reach an elevated position, then we find ourselves back where we were before. A lot of people will create their failure or sink their own boat by punching holes in their own lifeboat just through their own thinking. So they might reach that level of success. I had a business partner like that, and he was always, well, this business is going down. And I can't believe I got into this in the first place. And it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. He would create his own disaster on that front. So mindset becomes super, super important all along. I mean, you can have the best, and you and I were talking about strategy here just a moment ago before we started. Or maybe it gets in, who knows? But we were talking about strategy. You could have the best social media strategy in the world. You could have the best, business plan that's laid out. But if the business owner's head is in the right place, if it's not in the game, that's the destruction of the business. And we hear about that time and time again, where people wind up with the addictions, or they wind up doing things where their behavior. Oh, look at a Charlie Sheen, who's on top of the world. He's got a hit television show, and then his personal behaviors cause destruction within that. Even though they had a good structure, systematically, they had a structure for producing revenue, for generating money. He had big checks that were coming in as a result of the strategy that they were implementing to get a unique product into the marketplace and to monetize that product. Strategy was fine. What was not fine was the business owner's head, or the player's head in this case. And so if our head's not in the right place, that's a problem. And so, how we do that, I mean, I think, ultimately, if I was to chunk up real big and give a big picture strategy, ultimately it comes down to saturation. What's the environment that you saturate yourself in? Who are the mentors, the guides, the coaches that are surrounding you? What are the books that you're reading? What are the seminars that you're attending? And then what is the quality of your own emotional states? What's the quality of your own thoughts? What's the quality of your own conversations and the language that you have? All of these things, if we elevate those things, we perform at higher levels. There's a lot in that package, but we could always chunk down and look at each piece by piece to see what are the elements that we can elevate so that we're performing it at our best.
And one of the things you just mentioned too was, getting your mind, the mindset, and, you have to think positive. And, I've always said, in fact, when I was raising my son, you are what you're around, right? You are your environment. So if you're around a negative environment, you're going to be negative. You're going to recreate what you're around. One of my downfalls, one of my pitfalls has always been that I am what I call a realist. And I know you've heard that before, right? And I'm starting to realize that those of us who call ourselves realists are really calling ourselves pessimists. And it's because what's real and, what you want to happen and what is going to happen just on past experience, right? Just on educated experience, that certain things, especially in business. I mean, right. You can put this in a personal aspect as well, but in a business sense, that if you do these certain actions, historically, this is what the outcome's been, right? And so not to be a pessimist, like, well, no, that doesn't work, but you have to also be educated and smart about, the decisions you're making based on, you don't want to repeat past problems. So how do you be a realist and know that certain things are going to end up in certain ways, but still have that positive mindset? Because I still haven't been able to get around that obstacle yet.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's interesting because you get the kind of the pie in the sky thinkers, and oftentimes a newbie entrepreneur comes in, right, and they're like, "Well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Everything's going to be great."
Yeah. I've got a good friend of mine who's an actor, and he's always saying, "Well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a hit television show by here, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that." Now, I've been around for a while, and I look and I go, "Well, Marlon Brando said it took me 20 years to become an overnight success," but this young person who thinks, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I see in my mind, I'm going, you're setting yourself up for failure, set shorter term milestones that'll lead to those larger successes. And you can tap into some of that success that you want. Right. But if you've got these huge, outrageous goals that are likely not to come to pass as a result of just the sheer amount of time that it takes to accomplish something like that, then you're going to be beating yourself up and you're going to learn the hard way. So I get what you're saying. So it's like, if I was sitting down with an entrepreneur, and I've had to do this on a number of different occasions in coaching people, where the goals may be out of touch with what one would consider to be reality. And so you want to get that person moving in a way where they're able to succeed, because there's nothing that breeds success like success. Right. So if we can create that track record, it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, in business, as you know, like oftentimes we'll set business commitments from a goal setting perspective, and then we'll have our hit it out of the ballpark goals. So, this is the target, because if you don't set the target, you're never going to hit it. And the reality is that you and I have both had breakthrough results at various times in our life where we hit a higher result than we expected. So that happens as well. But at the same time, if we're not planning for the worst possible scenario, then we don't hit our minimum commitments to stay afloat, right? Exactly. So in my experience, we'll set both types of goals. And, when I worked for Dale Carnegie Training, they had a good system that we put in place to help us with that. It's called, I don't remember what they called it to Dale Carnegie. I call it performance results descriptions, or PRDs, where it's kind of like KPIs, where we'll sit down and we'll figure out what are our 5 key result areas that we need to produce results in over the next 3 months. And let's say it's sales, marketing, and, some other things. So we'll get these 5 key results areas in mind, and then we'll break each one of those 5 areas into 5 targets that we have to accomplish. So what would it take for me to go, this 3 months was super well spent from a sales perspective? Well, I'd have to hit this goal, this goal, this goal, and this goal. And then I'll set a business commitment and a breakthrough goal so that I can shoot for the breakthrough goal, be thrilled if I hit it, but at the same time, be satisfied if I hit my business commitment, because the business commitment was the minimal. So I think, that's worked for me in terms of stretching. And whenever I do goal setting, or, I'm kind of navigating the playing field of life, I always think when I set a goal also, it's always this or something better. So we don't want to preclude ourselves from better results because of our own thinking, as expectation does determine our outcomes to a large extent. When we raise our expectations, our outcomes can stretch. Madonna was once on Dick Clark's American Bandstand. And this was in the early days. This is like right when she did Material Girl, if you remember.
Okay. Yeah, we're going back a little
bit. Yeah, so the early days of Madonna, right? And he said, "What's your goal?" And she said, "I want to rule the world." And she may never have ruled the world, but she came pretty darn close, right? She did a lot. And I always say that the size of the results are in direct relationship to the size of the goals. So if we're not setting huge, outrageous goals, we're not likely to hit them.
You got to raise that
bar. But then also, we have to have these milestones that allow us to feel good about the success that we're getting as we're hitting traction as well. So we don't go in and beat ourselves up from a psychological perspective.
Yes. And I know this is so bad. I actually know that interview you're talking about. It's actually a very famous clip where she said that because it was in those early days before she absolutely exploded. Now she had already kind of popped out at that point, but which is why she was talking to Dick Clark. But and you'll see that a lot with some of these younger, more energetic, especially performers, right? Because they do know how to dream. I mean, that's why they do what they do, and that's why they're on TV doing interviews, is because they're achieving them. And I think with goals too, like you said, I think you mentioned this earlier, is you got to have the big one, but the big one feels out of reach and it feels like a dream, not a goal, if you don't start walking it backwards. And I always say, set that goal, set the big goal. What do you want to do this year? What's goal for the 5 years or whatever? It seems unattainable, as it should, because it's a goal, but it's just a dream if you don't create steps to get there. So you always do that big one at the end and then go backwards from that, right?
100%. And I think it's the right gradient too. I think this is something that's oftentimes overlooked in goal setting, because people will say, they'll use like the SMART criteria. It's got to be specific, measurable, action oriented, realistic. And for me, the problem with the word realistic is that it's unrealistic people that shape the world. You have to be unrealistic in your expectations to rise to your greatest height. But I think I would rather change that R in the SMART from realistic to right gradient. Make sure it's on the right gradient for you, which means that you're setting the shorter term milestones that lead to the greater successes, because your head has to be focused on that greater success in order to trigger the reticular activating system, which is that bundle of nerves at the base of the brain that sorts for ways to make it happen. It has to be focused on that higher level goal to bring in the means of making it happen. But at the same time, we need to breed success by hitting those shorter term milestones. So I think it's a combination between those two things for sure.
So what's the first step in training yourself to get that more positive mindset? Because it all starts there, I think. That you have to have your mind right. Everybody says that, get your mind right. What's the first step if you're, let's say somebody like me, and I know we don't know each other that well yet, but I am, again, I'm a realist.
I like you.
Hey man, I like you too. But I am a realist. I'd like to go into situations or, different things, knowing, being educated and as far as much as I can, and taking that, what I know, and applying it to make something happen that I want to make happen. Right. So if I'm being a realist, which can sometimes be pessimistic, how do I change that mindset? How do I start creating that more positive mindset, being realistic, but being more positive about what the outcome could be? What do I have to do first to change that?
Well, I think there's, at one level, it's so simple. On the other level, it's so complex, because there's, here I am, I'm 25 years into the field and I could still elevate my mindset. Right. And at the same time, you've got some basic principles that you can put in place that you can start. But it's kind of like if you go to a Zen Buddhist monk and you ask them, do you meditate? They'll say, yes. You'll say, are you successful at calming your thoughts all the time? They'll say, no, it's a practice. It's like everything else, right? So we've got to have the discipline and the practice in doing it. And I think that's the first thing to realize, that it's not the result of reading a book or going to a weekend seminar. It's a result of making it a practice of elevation of your thoughts. But it's, there's these staple basics that you can put in place to begin training your consciousness to be in a powerful place. A morning routine and a daily structure are the basic elements of that. I say daily structure because we all get in negative states throughout the course of the day. We might feel angry or sad or fearful or guilty about certain things. But if we have a daily structure and a routine, and it's interesting because entrepreneurs will oftentimes become entrepreneurs because they don't want a structure, they don't want a routine.
Right.
But it's that same lack of structure and lack of routine that can allow the mind to run amok. And if you've got a structure where you start with some sort of a morning routine and you structure your day with perhaps you go to the gym at some point, you have your meals at some point, you do a nighttime review, or you meditate in the evening, or you do something where you've got these things that are happening at set times during the day, then what happens is negative states become transient. They're meant to be transient anyway. They're meant to come and go. And when we move our body or we plug like you go to the gym, you go work out, you start moving your body, it triggers endorphins, it changes your state just because you're moving your body. So you don't have the opportunity to stew in negative states. So just having a daily structure can cause those states to become more transient. It's like Yoda said famously, and I'll try to get the quote right. He said, something to the extent of anger leads to fear leads to suffering. Something, ultimately you get to suffering, right? It always says fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to hate leads to suffering, something like that. And the problem is if we're feeling a negative emotion, like fear in that case, that negative emotion begins to percolate. Then we start to create a narrative in our mind. And then it turns into secondary states or tertiary states, third level states, where we create this narrative. And now we've got internal suffering.
Of all the ways that we take care of those that we love, the most important is providing the care they need when they need it most. Sawyer Health Solutions. Go to SawyerHealthSolutions.com for a free health insurance quote.
If you're going in and you're breaking up your day through your daily structure, it's causing those negative emotions to come and go, and it's breaking it up. So that's one good way to make sure that your head stays in a good place. Part of that daily structure and that daily routine is what you do first thing when you wake up in the morning. So that research has shown that whatever you do within the first 5 minutes of the day is going to be the lens through which you view the rest of your day. So if you can start off rather than getting up and reading some news article or jumping on something that pollutes your consciousness and puts you in a negative state of consciousness, or answering your phone or jumping into email first thing, if you get up and you do a gratitude list, or you get up and you focus on what you're happiest about, or what you're most excited about, or what you're most thrilled about or enthusiastic about, by focusing on those things first thing in the morning, that's going to help how you view the day. Or you focus on your goals, you focus on your targets.
So I shouldn't be checking my Facebook feed first thing in the morning, right?
I get you. Yeah. Well, and here we are, we're having the conversation, but it doesn't mean that I'm not guilty of doing it sometimes, sure. Right?
Oh, we're human.
Yeah. So just to keep it real, keep it raw, right? So yes, I mean, if we're taking conscious charge of how we're setting up the beginning of our day, we're going to put ourselves in a better frame of mind. You know, what I have in my shower, for example, is I've got a list of questions that I'll ask myself, including what am I happiest about? What am I most enthusiastic about? What am I most inspired by? So as long as I'm showering, I get to read these questions. I've got my goals laminated in my shower.
One more reason not to stop showering, right?
Right. Yeah. Now I'm not going to shower anymore. No. But I've got these focal points to help to train my consciousness so that sets the tone for the rest of the day. And then if I'm breaking my daily structure up through events, and then maybe a review at the end of the day where you focus once again on what are you most grateful for and stuff, that puts a structure to your day. I had a teacher that told me once that if you got a container of milk and you pour it in a cup, the cup holds the milk. Now you get a cup of milk. Okay. The milk is the content of your day. The cup is the structure that holds the content. If you take the cup away and you pour the milk, you got a mess. And most people have a mess with their life. They have a mess with their because they don't have a structure for the day. And if you put in place a daily structure, that's one good way to begin to manage your states of mind and emotion.
I like that analogy too, because if you don't have the cup, you still have the milk, right? The milk's still there. All the stuff's still there. It's just all over the place as opposed to being in one place. And what's funny is I catch myself doing this a lot when I have these types of interviews for the podcast, is talking to experts like yourself, specialists that this is what they do, and I should be learning a lot from you. And all the stuff, and no disrespect at all meant by this, it all sounds so corny. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make a list about all these things that I'm grateful for. That just sounds so corny, right? But every expert is saying the same thing. Make that list. You need to have that in front of you, that positive thing. What do you look forward to every day? Because sometimes you don't pay attention to it. You take it for granted. Your spouse, your kids, your health. Oh my God, that should be at the top of everybody's list right now. And that sounds corny on its own. Oh, I'm happy to be healthy. Well, with COVID going on, you really should. We've had more people die from COVID than it died for World War II.
Yeah,
Americans wise,
I would think here's how I might perceive it. It's like almost it's corny in relationship to who? Because I remember when I first got into personal development, I used to, they've got these personal development books, and many of them have the motivational speaker's face with a big smile on it on the cover. And it's
right.
like, oh, I'm going to hide that. I'm not going to because I felt like same thing, corny. But that's in relationship to the world. Here you've got your own practice, and it's like, so just getting real with yourself. It's like, and I'm not suggesting you jump up and down or scream or do anything rah. Like, I'm not suggesting anything like that. I'm suggesting you just take charge of your thoughts. And so what I would say for that is I'd say, do it, practice it. Not, it's not, this isn't for anybody else, but for you. And if you try it for 10 days and you're not in a better place, I'd be shocked. As long as you went about it in a way that was earnest in nature.
Sure.
Because if you went about it going, oh, this is stupid, right, then you're going to get stupid results.
And is that where imposter syndrome kind of pops up? Because I kind of feel like and I've had this conversation before, that you kind of feel like you're forcing yourself to do something or to be somebody that you don't feel like you are. But that's the point. You're not that person. You're not that positive person. And you're trying to get there. So the only way to get there is to start doing the things that positive people do, or start doing the things that successful people do. And in turn, by doing it over, just like anything else, the repetition creates the habit. And once it's a habit, then you're in that place where you don't have to try so hard. So you do kind of have to feel like you're impersonating somebody that you aren't when you first start doing this.
I suppose so. It's like they say that the strongest force in the human psyche is the desire to defend our sense of identity, who we perceive ourselves to be. But who you're being determines what you do, the actions that you take, and the results ultimately that you produce, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. So your beingness, who you are, is super important. And when you look at it, you've gotten to where you are as a result of the goals that you set. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this interview today if you didn't set up the goal if you didn't have the intention to do the podcast. But you've also gotten to where you are as a sum total of the result of the intentions that you've set consciously, but also your unconscious baggage that gets projected outward too. Because in life, we get the sum total of both. Now, neurobiologists these days say it's only about 5% of who we are that one would consider to be conscious. So the other 95% is unconscious. So in life, we'll get our conscious intentions oftentimes, but we also get the other 95% of the garbage that comes back with it because we haven't taken charge of that other 95%. So I would submit to you that every success that you've got is a result of goals. Human beings are goal-setting creatures. We set a goal to brush our teeth. We set a goal we don't think of them as goals, but we do. We set a goal to get on board and jump on the webinar to do the podcast. So we set these intentions, but when we start to change who we're being, what we're really changing, when we elevate our thinking and when we elevate our actions and when we elevate all this stuff, we're really becoming a more powerful manifester. We're becoming a more powerful version of ourselves. And so, for me, it's just about getting out of our own way and saying, you know what, I want to get even more of what I want. I want to perform at greater levels. If we want to perform at greater levels, then it's, as Einstein said, we can't solve the significant problems we face at the same level of thinking we're at that created them. We need to up our thinking. We need to up our actions. We need to upgrade the whole package of these things that equal performance, that equal results. So, if we get stuck in the internal argument that that's not who we are, well, maybe it's not who we've been, but who we are has to change if we want to have the money change in the bank account. If we want to have, so we that's the path to it. It's always the path to it.
And I think that hit That hit pretty hard because
Oh, good.
that's how I feel is if I start doing those things, that's not me. Well, that's the whole point. I don't want to be that person. Like I love who I am. And I think I'm on a great trajectory. I think I'm on a good path and I mean well. But there are some things that are holding me back. And those things are the things I want to change. Right. And I think that the first step is at least seeing those things and acknowledging that, hey, man, there's some things you need to change. And I think if you change them, you'll be happier and the people around you will be happier as well. So the whole point is to not be who you were or be who you are. It's to create a better version of yourself. Still be you, but be a better version of. And I think that's
I like
very
that
important.
you say you love who you are too, because I think that's an important component of it. If we don't love who we are, then we create internal conflict. We have incongruence within ourselves. But if we can love who we are while simultaneously evolving into a higher expression of ourselves, therein lies the magic, right? So it's not the rejection of who we are that allows us to become the new. It's embracing who we are and expanding it to understand that we're more than what we gave ourselves credit for.
Exactly. So going on that, what about the folks that have hit rock bottom? They're all the way down there, and your self-image, how you feel about yourself and how you view yourself is just bad. You're a failure at everything. Everything I touch turns bad. The people around me are worse off by knowing me. And when you start to get that negative mindset, how do you change it when you're that low? I know we started the show off kind of on this subject, but when you're that low and everything just seems negative everywhere around you, how do you bring that back up from being that low? That's a narrative that you got going in your mind. Everything I touch turns bad. So you've got this narrative that's happening. And in my experience, because I've been that low, I've been there and I totally get it. A lot of people will go in and they'll say, okay, well, I've got to, they say that you've heard before, I am are the two most powerful words in the English language because whatever you put after them is what you become. I am. You're claiming I am depressed. I am happy. I am excited. I am someone who'll never amount to anything. I am destined to become the president of the United States. So it's your self-concept that determines your actions and determines your results. But going in to change your self-concept when you're that low is, it can oftentimes seem like a futile exercise because you're trying to convince yourself something that you don't really believe, right? And that can be a challenge in my experience. So the fastest path to that is to change who you're being rather than who you perceive yourself to be. And the way that you change who you're being is, once again, for me, the fastest path is to focus on the states that you're living in. Because once you do that, you will be being somebody different. So once again, if we I heard a shaman, this was on the Clubhouse app again. This guy was a shaman and he was describing how you could download states from the universe. He's going to use different language than I use, which sounds very esoteric, sounds very kind of kooky, right? But there's also, if you try it on, it actually works. And it's a different means of getting to the same place that I would get somebody. So he's like, if you open up and you say, okay, I'm open to receiving the state of joy. Please give me the state of joy. And he says, you download the state of joy. Well, if you really open yourself up to that, you get rid of the critical part of yourself. And you say, I'm open, and you have positive expectation that joy comes in, you'll start to feel the joy. Getting rid of that critical part of yourself may be the hard part. Right.
The way that I would go about it is just by asking yourself questions and say, okay, what am I feeling the most joy about in my life right now? Or alternatively, what could I be feeling the most joy about in my life right now? And they don't have to be big things. They can be little teeny small things. And I could say, I'm feeling right now the most joy about the fact that I can see the ocean as I'm talking to you. And that makes me feel joy. Okay. And then if I anchor it in by asking myself another question, like what's important to me about that? And that ties it into my values. Your values are what's most important to you. What's important to me about the fact that I see the ocean right now is that I live by the beach. How does that make me feel? It makes me feel blessed. Okay, now if I can really get into that blessed feeling about something small, Some people would say it's big. For me, it's kind of a small little thing in the, now I'm feeling the joy and I'm feeling blessed. And then I can ask myself another question. I can ask myself, what am I most enthusiastic about in my life right now? I'm enthusiastic to be talking to you. I like you. You're a nice guy. We're having a good interview. I feel like I've got a good connection with you. I feel enthusiastic about that. What's important to me about that is getting the message out in a way that I'm also enjoy. And how does that make me feel? Blessed once again. So now I'm feeling a different state. Now, if I go through this process and I ask myself these questions, even if they're little teeny things that are coming up, states are relative. You know, whether I'm feeling enthusiastic that I just made $1 million or I'm feeling enthusiastic that I can see the water, it's still the state of enthusiasm. And as long as I'm feeling enthusiastic and I'm feeling joyful, I'm feeling blessed, I'm going to raise my vibration. I'm going to attract better things. The conversations I'm going to have are superior conversations. And I'm no longer in a narrative, everything I touch turns to crap or so now I'm in a positive mindset. So for me, and now I've changed to the states of mind and emotion that I'm feeling is who I'm being. And if I can anchor in positive states on a regular basis, remember, everything's state dependent. So if I'm in a state of procrastination or a state of pessimism, that's going to produce a certain result. If I'm in a state of joy, enthusiasm, gratitude, that's going to produce a completely different result. One is attractive to people, resources, and opportunities. The other is repellent. So the states that I anchor myself in on a daily basis, and when I hit my lowest low, when I hit my rock bottom, back to your rock bottom question, I couldn't dream big anymore because like I had experienced loss in the business world. I had, I didn't know who I could trust. I didn't want to create another business relationship. I didn't want to dream real big because if I built it before and it could all be torn down, why can't it happen again? Negative narrative. To the extent that I was stuck in that negative narrative, I sat around, did nothing all day and felt depressed. But as I started to just look for the little things that I felt enthusiastic about, inspired by, optimistic about, as I started to look for those things and started to anchor myself into those states, it's weird. It's spooky. My phone starts ringing. People saying they want to do business with me. And it just, there's this, the whole idea that a butterfly that flaps its wings on one side of the planet can make changes on the other, can start a typhoon on the other side of the planet. That whole idea that when you create change within this microcosm, macrocosm, the world around you starts to change. And it all stems back to who are you being? And so for me, anchoring yourself into these states of mind and emotion on a regular basis is the first action that you can take, as long as you do it earnestly. Because if you go in and say, what am I most optimistic about? And you go, nothing, this is crap. Right. Then you're not going to get a good result. But if you say, what could I be most optimistic about? And you look for your answers with ferocious curiosity, you'll find great answers and you'll start to transform.
And I like that it can start with something so small. Like you said, just look out the window. It's a sunny, beautiful day out, right? Or, let's say it's
snowing and you can appreciate the magic
exactly.
of that.
Yeah, if you live somewhere where it's snowing, I personally came from snow. And now I live in Florida, so snow's not a good thing for me, but it is beautiful, right? It is beautiful. So if I was back up north and it was snowing, I'm like, man, it is really beautiful. And if you think about it, it's kind of like a miracle, like it comes down. I mean,
where did you come from?
I'm from Champaign, Illinois, originally.
Oh, okay. I'm from Lake Tahoe, so we both grew up in the snow.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in the snow and I moved away from it. But then again, people who live down here really appreciate the snow because they may have never seen it. So, but it isn't too hard to find something to be positive about. And I think you're right. It starts with that one thing and then it just multiplies over and over and over again. And a lot of people will use that term energy, right? If you put out good energy, you get good energy back. And again, I kind of, when I hear the energy word, it kind of makes me feel like the corny thing.
Sounds kind of hokey. Right?
It sounds hokey, but at the same time, if you think about it in something that you can understand, right? Energy is hard to understand. But if you talk about it in the sense of when I go out someplace and I'm shopping and people are just pushing their carts, doing their thing, minding their own business, when you catch that eye contact as you walk by them and you smile, what do they do back? Right? They smile back. That's the energy. You're putting out good energy. They're bringing back good energy. And that's, I think, a good example of you get what you give. And
it's a great example because from a leadership perspective, Yeah, from a leadership perspective, that's everything. Because what's a leader do? They produce results. Once again, a leader helps people to close the gap between where they are, where they want to be. Mm-hmm. They see things as they are, see things as they might be, and close that gap. But a leader does it with 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people or millions of people. And the energy that you put out one-on-one in the supermarket when you're passing that person creates and elicits a response in somebody else. And I always say that all of leadership is about state elicitation. It's about the states of mind and emotion you can elicit in other people. MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., elicited certain states of mind and emotion. He took people that were in a state of resignation. He wove a beautiful vision that caused them to feel a state of inspiration, and they went out and changed the face of a nation. So it starts, all of leadership starts from within. It's microcosm, macrocosm once again. It really does. You know, for me, because I've taught on stages all my life and done large audiences. The first time I went to London, we had 6,000 people in the seminar. And so teaching large rooms, I knew that I was the wellspring of attitude for everybody in that room. The attitude that I felt was going to determine the way that the people in the room felt and the attitude that I brought to it. So understanding that the leader is the wellspring of attitude for everyone around them is what allows us to produce huge results. We got to start on a micro level with ourselves, but this expands to produce much, much greater results in the world.
How does that work when you're on stage? Because that's something that has always been of great interest to me. I've always wanted to be a public speaker, a motivator on stage. I love being in front of a lot of people. In fact, when I'm also a drummer, and back in the day, and I mean way back in the day, I loved being on stage. I love that feeling of knowing that people are paying money to watch me do what I love to do. And I love to talk. I'd love to help people. I'd love the feeling that it provides me. When I can make you feel good, it makes me feel good. So that's how I stay happy, is making other people happy. And I would love to be able to do that on a larger scale, hence the podcast. When you're on stage like that and you're providing these tips or ways that people can improve their lives, and you're looking out across those people, and I don't know how much light is in those auditoriums that you're speaking to, but if there's light that where you can actually see faces in the crowd, there's always going to be somebody's face or multiple that they're not absorbing it in like everybody else or like most folks would. How does that, can you sense that when you're on the stage, when you're speaking to these people? And if so, does it change how you present the words that you're speaking?
100%. I mean, number one, you never want to have the lights so much that you can't see their eyes, because eye contact is the key to rapport, and anything's possible in the presence of a good rapport. Rapport is, just as we can create rapport one-on-one, we can create rapport with a group of 10,000, and we can create instant rapport if we have that instantaneous connection where we look at the audience as one interdependent living being. And so as we see that and as we drink them in with our eyes, I mean, if I had a nightmare one time that I was talking to a split level audience where I couldn't see the upper half and I lost rapport with them and I lost that half. So, and that can happen. When you're communicating with an audience, you look for those people that may be out of rapport, where they're crossing their arms, they're looking the other way, they're not engaged. You want to, it's incumbent upon you as a leader to bring those people back into the group, because we have what are called rapport leaders inside of a group it's almost like the epicenter, and you've got ripples that will come out from them. And if you lose rapport with one, if they're a rapport leader with a pocket of people around them, you'll lose that entire cross section of your audience. So in the early days, when I was, before I had studied and trained and been trained in public speaking, I remember I had an audience I was speaking to, one of my first seminars, and there was a couple of guys in the back that just weren't paying attention. They were screwing around, and I lost them. And what a beginning speaker might do is pander to the parts of the audience that are really giving them attention, which is what I did. As a result, they pulled out that whole pocket of people, part of the audience left and never came back. It was a tough lesson, right? And so later on, I learned that those are you've got to bring those people back in, and you bring them back in with eye contact, you bring them in.
So you're actually focusing on the people that don't seem like they're grasping what you're talking about. You're actually going to be talking more specifically to them.
You need to grab them, engage them, and pull them in, and now you've got the whole audience with you. Yeah. So we don't ignore those aspects. What we do is we pull those aspects back in, and that's how we maintain and manage group rapport with big big audiences. I think that's real important. Yeah.
I like that because if you've already gotten the majority of the audience out there, they're on board and you know that they're fully engaged, but you have that 5%, 10% that just, man, they're just not feeling what you're saying, that you're going to direct it more towards them because you've already got everybody else. They're already on board, so you got to work on the ones that aren't.
And for me, it's as simple as giving them a little eye contact and pulling them back into the conversation so that they're engaged. And I might look at them directly in the eyes and say, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? And then pretty soon they're like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And then you can pull them back into the entire group. So that becomes real critical in terms of maintaining management of the group as a whole, as one interdependent living entity once again. And then if all of leadership is about state elicitation, if I'm looking to pull the audience into a state of inspiration, just as I might do one-on-one, then I need to be inspired myself, be in rapport with the audience. And if I'm in rapport with the audience, they will also be brought into that state of inspiration. And so we go after those elements that might be out of rapport to pull them back in. So we've got the entire audience.
I like that. I like that a lot because that's one of the things I've been in seminars, tons of seminars, right? And not just about this subject, but you name it, right? I was in, corporate management for 17 years. So we had a seminar on damn near everything, right? So you're not always going to be involved in every subject. But if I had a speaker who did try to involve me, and maybe not specifically me, but people like me, and noticed that I wasn't on board, but tried to rework the way that they spoke to get folks like me on board, it does make you feel like you're a little bit more part of something. And sometimes that in itself is what brings you on board.
And sometimes people can be the best leaders within the group. Once you capture them, it's like they're going to bring a whole group of people with them. Right?
Exactly. Chris, thanks so much, man. That's our time for today. Man, it went fast. If you wouldn't mind, let all the listeners know how they can reach out to you. I know you said you have a book as well. I believe you said you had a book.
Yeah, I got a couple of books.
Maybe I'm hearing things. So make sure you tell them about the book name and where they can find it and any other ways they can contact you.
Yeah, well, we've got a challenge that's coming up, and I won't give specific dates because I don't want to date this. But, we've got a 5-day challenge. It's totally free. It's called the Wealth Propulsion Challenge. If you go there, that's a permalink. So if you go there and this challenge is passed, we'll have another thing coming up, but it is coming up fast. So you want to go to this link fast. It's wealthpropulsion.com. www.wealthpropulsion.com. Come and join me for a free training experience. That's at wealthpropulsion.com. I've also got, if you're really interested in the speaking or how to amplify your message, get it out to the masses, I've got a free resource also. It's called speakandgrowrich365.com. So www.speakandgrowrich365.com. That's a 365-day program where every day you receive emails that unpack how to become a powerful speaker and the business of speaking. So that's speakandgrowrich365.com. I've got a couple of books. My first book was called Turning Passion. The second book was Instant Wealth, Wake Up Rich. So those are great books. You can always grab those. Probably best off just looking at those free resources. They'll come and join us for that free training or Rich 365. And love to connect with you more and partner with you on your journey in whatever way possible.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. I learned so much from this, and I'm going to have some more conversations with you. And in fact, awesome. I would like to have more and actually record them like this, because if it's going to help me, I want to be able to share that with everybody else as well. So thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule today to talk to us. I really appreciate it. And I hope to get to talk to you again soon.
Awesome. You got it, brother.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you for joining us this week. Go to our website at thebizreveal.com to catch all of our past episodes. We're available on all podcast apps, or you can watch any of our episodes on the Biz Reveal YouTube channel. I'm Craig Sawyer, and this is the Biz Reveal. Till next time.